It's been 2 years since I started this test between the bagged organics mix and the soilless mix that I made myself. And we've been testing them on Owari Satsuma Mandarins, and we finally have some results that are worth tasting. So one of these is coming from one of the trees, one of them from the other. Which one? I'll let you know. But first, let's talk about how these trees have grown a little bit differently and some of the characteristics that we're noticing 2 years in. All right, let's check it out. Starting off with a little side-by-side comparison. On the left, we have the bagged organics mix. On the right, we have the soilless mix. And the first thing you're going to notice is they're shaped quite a bit differently. The bagged mix is a little taller, it's a little more sparse. You'll notice the leaves aren't as dense and there's a lot of open area. I don't want to call it spindly because it still looks pretty good, but when you look at the soilless mix, you'll notice it is this dense canopy of these beautiful green leaves, and you can just really tell a difference between the two trees at this point, just merely from the dense foliage. Here's another shot of the bagged mix. It's not bad, it really isn't. You'll see some of the fruit on here look kind of awful. Yeah, I left them on too long this year. Things have been a little crazy. We just had a newborn and, can't quite pick all the fruit I want all the time and things get neglected. What are you gonna do? As far as the fruit goes though, remember this tree's set 39 and I left something like 22, can't quite remember, but it was in the low 20s that I left on. So remember that before we get to the taste test a little later on. Here's a couple more shots of the leaves. These are healthy leaves, dark green, they look rich, and they're moderately good sized. But in comparison to the soilless mix, they do look small. Again, the leaves on the soilless mix look bigger. I wouldn't say they look healthier necessarily because they both look healthy, but definitely something to be said for the size of these soilless leaves. Going back to the organics mix, you're going to see this reoccurring problem where it keeps condensing, it keeps compressing, getting smaller, and it is really far below the top of the pot at this point. It keeps compressing further and further down, and there's also this issue where when I move this pot, I notice more and more of this soil is coming out the bottom. There's not a lot of structure holding it together, and therefore you're getting some seepage or fallout in the bottom. And that's even with me planting it with a wire mesh over the hole. So, this isn't ideal. But what's even less ideal is a mealybug infestation. This is nasty. And this isn't on the soilless mix. This is only on the bagged organics mix. And this is a disgusting infestation of mealybugs. And it's been here at this point for about a month and just chewing away. There are some beautiful signs of hope, though, for a great next year of growing, and that's these new leaves coming in. You see them just starting to poke out now, and some new flowers coming as well. So, tree's doing okay. Gonna prune off the mealybug infestation, and should be good to go for that next growing season. So let's move on to the soilless mix. Again, this was made of perlite, pumice, sand, biochar, peat moss, and cocoa coir. And you can see this tree is doing good. It looks real solid. It is really dense. The leaves are super green, and this plant set 89 fruit this year. This little teeny tiny Satsuma Mandarin. That's pretty crazy. I did pull a bunch of them. I can't remember exactly how many, but I do believe I left something like in the high 30s. And just look at these fruit. They are big. They are noticeably bigger. And I'll show you in a minute when we do the taste test just how big of a difference there is between the size of the fruit on each tree. Here's the top view. Looks good. So before we taste the fruit, we need to harvest it. And at the same time, I'm going to be pruning these up, getting rid of that mealybug infestation on the bagged soil mix, and just kind of thinning out and not having so much weight far out on these branches on the soilless mix because it is really sprawling out. And you can see I took way more off the soilless mix than on the bagged mix. And you can also see I got more fruit left over still on the Soilless mix. And this is what I had left right here from the organics mix. One of the biggest things I notice about the difference in the fruit is just the size and the shape. It's very clear to see that the Soilless mix came out with bigger fruit. The other thing that was kind of interesting to see is that the Soilless mandarins actually peel quite a bit easier. They released from the skin quite a bit more versus this is quite a bit more taut. It's a little different. You can tell here when you look at them. This one's like a little spongier and released, and this one is a little more firm. Just something that I thought was interesting, and I'll check back in on it next year, see if it's still the case, but definitely an interesting finding so far. So let's crack into these. Classically easy to peel. One of the nice features of an Owari. Look at that nice piece of fruit. I'm not a perfectionist, but definitely like to get rid of as much of the fuzzies as possible. So let's take just a little bite right here, see what it's like. I mean, that's excellent. This fruit is 10 times better than last year. Last year was the first growing season, so you know, I just didn't really probably have enough energy to produce a really sweet fruit, but this is coming along great. I wouldn't say this is the best mandarin I've ever had, but if you bought this at a store, you'd be blown away by it. I give it probably like an A-. Yeah, just exceptional flavor. It's such a good mandarin. All right, let's get into this bagged mix. The fruit is noticeably a little more firm, which is interesting. I'm not sure I would really expect that. Smells nice too. It's still a fantastic looking fruit. And let's give it a try. I mean, honestly, still really good. I mean, that's close to on par with the Soilless one. Very impressive. Maybe a little more tart, which is something I've noticed. This isn't the first one that I've eaten. Been sneaking them for a while, but it's definitely a little more tart. It's a little more firm. I mean, excellent though. This is an A- again. And it's surprising that with the bag mix, the fruit is still this good despite kind of all those characteristics we're seeing where the tree doesn't seem to be doing quite as good. But I mean, if I was buying this and I wasn't doing a test and this right here is what I got from the bag mix, I'd be pretty happy about it. All right, 2 years in the books on this potting mix test. Pretty excited to see how these things have turned out. And I think by next season, 3 years in, we're gonna see these differences kind of escalate and get bigger and bigger. That's my presumption. Maybe I'm wrong. There's only one way to find out. One more year. So let's prep these trees for another good growing season, and I'll see you in the next video.